The year was 1824, and Washington City carried the kind of tension that never spoke, but was always felt. It lingered in the streets like a breath held too long, drifting over muddy roads, sliding through the half-built alleys, and echoing against the cold marble of federal buildings that still smelled of fresh stone. The capital was young, restless, and filled with minds more ambitious than the place knew how to contain. And yet, beneath the political speeches and gentlemanly smiles, something quieter swirled. Rumors, tiny sparks that moved from tavern corners to newspaper offices, from back parlors to grand drawing rooms, slipping through the Capitol like thin smoke. They started small, as they always do. A word dropped too carelessly, a letter passed too quietly, a whisper carried by someone who shouldn't have heard it. But in 1824, when the old political order was crumbling and no one knew what would rise in its place, even a rumor had the power to tilt the nation. It began on a wet gray morning in early spring. A messenger boy, barefoot, nervous, always running a little too fast, burst into Gadsby's tavern with a sealed envelope. The moment he stepped inside, the room quieted. 10 politicians, 3 journalists, 2 retired naval officers, and at least 1 spy in disguise turned their heads toward him. "Letter for Congressman Rutledge," the boy said. The tavern keeper nodded. Rutledge, a tall man with a face permanently pinched by suspicion, rose from his corner table and took the letter. No one knew what was in it, but they watched his expression shift. His brow tightened, his lips lowered, a deep frown appeared. He folded the letter carefully, slipped it inside his coat, and left without finishing his breakfast. The moment the door closed behind him, the tavern erupted. What was in that letter? Who sent it? Did anyone see the seal? Someone claimed it was from Kentucky. Another insisted it was from Boston. A third swore it carried the Adams family seal, though no one could confirm it. No one knew it then, but that letter, true or not, would become the seed of a rumor that would haunt Washington for months. A secret deal is being made to decide the next president. The 1824 presidential election had become a beast with no master. 4 men, John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and William Crawford, had split the electoral votes like warring generals dividing land. No one had a majority. The Constitution handed the final decision to the House of Representatives, and that was when every whisper became a weapon. Washington buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. In boarding houses, lawmakers stayed awake until dawn, arguing over states, regions, and loyalties. In parlors, wives warned their husbands to trust no one. Journalists sharpened their quills like daggers, writing columns designed to wound reputations rather than inform readers. And everywhere, rumors grew. Jackson's supporters claimed Adams had made promises to secure Northern votes. Adams' allies insisted Jackson planned to forcefully expand presidential power. Crawford's camp spread stories about Henry Clay's ego, declaring him unfit to hold influence over anything larger than a horse stable. No rumor was too absurd, no accusation too bold, no lie too large, because the Capitol had entered a state where people believed whatever confirmed their fears. The rumors reached the White House, too. President James Monroe, gray-haired and weary, tried to maintain his usual calm, but even he felt the tremors. His wife, Elizabeth Monroe, hosted a gathering one evening in their large parlor, hoping to soothe tensions among the political elite. The room glowed with candlelight, silver trays of refreshments, and the rustle of silk skirts. Yet beneath the sparkle, conversations were sharp-edged. Near the fireplace stood Louisa Catherine Adams, wife of John Quincy Adams, her polite smile barely masking her exhaustion. Congressman Wilkins of Pennsylvania approached her. "Mrs. Adams, I presume your husband is confident in the house's decision." Louisa replied with practiced grace, "My husband places his confidence in the process, not the result." But Wilkins pressed on. "Rumor says he's made arrangements with certain members of Congress." Louisa's spine stiffened. "A rumor," she said, "is often no more than the imagination of a bored mind." Yet her hand trembled slightly as she raised her teacup. Across the room, Andrew Jackson's wife, Rachel, whispered to a friend that Adams was no better than a schemer. Rachel meant it as a private comment, but in Washington, nothing remained private for long. Her words left the White House faster than the guests did. That night, new whispers began. Even Adams's wife fears the truth. Jackson's camp says Adams sold his honor, and the Capitol inhaled the rumors eagerly. One rainy afternoon, a guard at the Navy Yard found a torn letter near the docks. Water had blurred the ink, but one sentence remained legible. "If Clay delivers the West to Adams, the position will be his." That single fragment became the most explosive rumor of the year. Newspapers published the sentence in oversized fonts. Tavern keepers repeated it so often that customers memorized it. Members of Congress denied it publicly but discussed it privately. The rumor had everything: intrigue, ambition, betrayal. Did Clay promise his influence in exchange for a cabinet seat? Was John Quincy Adams making deals behind closed doors? Was someone planting forged letters to swing the vote? No one knew, but the rumor itself became more powerful than the truth. Henry Clay was furious. The corrupt bargain, as newspapers now labeled it, spread so quickly that it reached him before his morning coffee. He stormed through the Capitol building, his boots echoing loudly in the marble halls. When he confronted a newspaper editor outside the Senate chamber, his voice shook the corridor. "That letter is a lie, a damned lie, and you know it." The editor bowed slightly. "Mr. Clay, we only print what the public wishes to know." "What the public wishes is not always the truth." But Clay's anger only fueled the rumor. Pub owners reenacted the scene dramatically, adding tears, insults, and imaginary threats. Listeners loved it. Within a week, the Capitol believed Clay had thrown a chair, though he never touched one.
Rumors swelled further after a dimly lit meeting took place at Tunnicliff's boarding house, a favorite lodging for congressmen. 3 representatives, one from Ohio, one from Maryland, one from New York, entered quietly at midnight. The next morning, a servant claimed to have overheard them discussing the presidency, promising votes, even negotiating positions. The story passed through Washington like wildfire. By noon, the rumor was, a midnight conspiracy is shaping the presidency. By sunset, it had evolved into, several states have joined the conspiracy. And by the next day, the entire election is being bought, vote by vote. The Republic trembled with suspicion. In his diary, John Quincy Adams wrote that Washington had become a place of shadows and tales. He attempted to avoid the gossip, but suspicion clung to him wherever he went. Men shook his hand politely, then whispered behind his back. Journalists watched his windows to see who entered or left. One night, Adams walked alone along Pennsylvania Avenue. The gas lamps glowed dimly. The air smelled of smoke and river fog. He paused near a construction site for a new row of townhouses and leaned against a wooden scaffold, staring up at the dark sky. "Is this what the Revolution's sons have become?" he whispered. "A country that once fought for independence, now fought over whispers." While Adams kept silent, Andrew Jackson roared. At a rally in Georgetown, he slammed his fist on a table so hard the mugs rattled. "I made no bargains. I asked for none," he shouted. "But others seek to steal what the people chose." The crowd went wild. Men raised their hats. Women cheered. Children climbed barrels for a better view. Jackson's words struck like lightning.
If Adams enters office through corruption, the presidency will be poisoned. And the rumor, whether true or not, became truth in the minds of thousands. By late January, Washington City felt like a powder keg. Every conversation contained the phrase, "I heard that." Every dinner table buzzed with predictions of crisis. Every letter carried warnings, fears, or accusations. The city breathed rumors like oxygen. A tailor claimed he overheard 2 senators plotting to choose Adams. A barber insisted Jackson would arrest members of Congress if he lost. A merchant swore Crawford was planning to expose everyone. The Capitol no longer knew what was real. On February 9, 1825, the House of Representatives gathered to choose the next president. Crowds flooded the streets outside the Capitol. Men climbed trees. Women stood on crates. Reporters elbowed each other for position. Soldiers maintained a perimeter. Inside, tension thickened the air. The representatives cast their ballots in silence. When the result was announced, John Quincy Adams is elected President of the United States. Washington didn't cheer. It didn't celebrate. It exhaled sharply, as though expecting the sky to fall. And then, the rumors exploded louder than ever. 2 days later, Adams named Henry Clay as his Secretary of State. That was all it took. The Capitol erupted. "Proof," shouted Jackson supporters. "Betrayal," cried Western congressmen. "Conspiracy," thundered newspaper editorials. Whether Adams and Clay had truly planned it or not no longer mattered. The rumor became legend. Even decades later, people would still tell the story as fact. Tensions thickened for the remainder of winter. Jackson refused all invitations to the White House. Clay stopped attending private gatherings. Adams spent evenings in solitude, writing in his journal about the heavy weight of falsehood. Rumors continued to ripple through the Capitol. Jackson will challenge Clay to a duel. Adams plans to rewrite the Constitution. Clay will resign. Jackson will run again and win. Some were lies. Some contained seeds of truth. Some would shape the next decade. By the time spring arrived, Washington looked the same on the surface. Same muddy streets, same white stone buildings, same ambitious men roaming its halls. But the Capitol had changed. Trust had been shattered. Friendships broken. Political alliances permanently reshaped. And the age of polite, gentlemanly politics was fading. In its place rose something harsher, louder, more democratic, and more dangerous. 4 years later, Andrew Jackson returned to the Capitol, triumphant in the election of 1828. The crowds cheering him were far larger than in 1824. He had not forgotten the rumors. He had not forgiven them. His supporters carried banners reading, "Down with the bargain. The people remember. Jackson is justice." Rumors had created his defeat. Rumors had fueled his return. Rumors became history. Years later, older and wiser, John Quincy Adams would reflect, "It was not lies that shaped the nation, but the willingness of men to believe them." Washington City, born from ideals of reason and truth, had discovered its vulnerability. Rumors could stir the Capitol more powerfully than armies. And in the fragile early years of the Republic, the line between truth and tale was as thin as a torn letter found in the rain.